Okay, so good morning or good afternoon, depending on which classroom you're in there at the Erie County Technical School in Mr. Salarino's outstanding graphic communications classroom. My name is Frederick Dunn. I'm a professional photographer, I'm a painter, I have a background in fine arts, and Mr. Salarino invited me to come and talk to you in your classroom. Unfortunately, I'm super busy and don't have the time to make the trip out there. I would enjoy talking with everyone there, but I asked him instead to go ahead and send questions, and I would create an unlisted YouTube video, which is what you're watching right now, and I'll answer the questions that you submit. So next thing you know, got an email here, and it has questions. It says here, photography lesson scheduled for Wednesday, so I'm guessing it's Wednesday, unless you miss school that day and you're watching it on another day, because it is YouTube, and YouTube is forever. Questions are 100% student driven. Thank you for being interested in photography and for taking the time to ask these well-formed questions. Since there are so many questions, can you pick, and you can pick and choose, he says. Now I'm going to do them all. I care that much about you that I'm going to answer all 12 of these questions. Don't get bored. If you're good, there's probably a break, unless it's Monday. I don't think there's breaks on Monday, but when I was there, I always looked forward to those breaks. Let's start off with number one. What got you into photography? That's a big question and kind of hard to answer, really. What gets anyone into photography? Me personally, I grew up in a photography studio. My dad was a professional photographer. That's how I knew I never wanted to be a professional photographer, because it's just too hard. All the time in the darkroom, all the time retouching the people that you work with. He was a portrait photographer. He was well recognized. And he had a strong influence on me growing up because his portraits were amazing. The idea that the people that I looked at on the walls in the studio that I thought were just incredible, when they would walk through the door and you realize those are real people, that used to shock me. Especially as a teenager. It's just like, wow, those people are real. Look, they're coming right in here. My dad was great at getting people comfortable and then taking a portrait that was above and beyond the way they might have seen themselves through anyone else's lens. So the idea that you can communicate to someone the way you see them, maybe on a higher creative plane, then that is captivating and that's motivating. And it's one of the reasons why I went into photography. First off was to take pictures so that I could paint pictures, so freeze a moment. We have a windy, stormy afternoon. We have a person standing out in a field and their dress is being wind blown and their hair is wind blown, and you get that snapshot, and now I need 6 hours to paint it. I need photography to freeze that moment so that I can spend all those hours developing a fine art piece from it. Then you fast forward many years later, and then we find out digital photography comes out. Digital photography made image capturing immediate. Not only that, we can cheat. You can look at the back of your camera and see immediately what you're going to have when you get it back to your computer and you bring it up on your big screen. So the guesswork is kind of gone once you've learned how to capture the image the way you want. So what motivated me was to take pictures of people and see the result in their face. So in other words, when you show them the picture the way you've seen them, that's inspiring if they're happy about it. If they're not happy about it, then that's equally inspiring in the other direction. Maybe you shouldn't be a photographer. And depending on what kind of photographer you are. So the other thing about me is I would go to remote places. I've been all over the world. I'm interested in bees and wasps and hornets and snakes and reptiles and tarantulas in the desert and things like that. Can I get you to come with me and lay in the sand at 10 o'clock at night, 2 feet from a tarantula that's about to come out of his hole in the ground? I don't think so. Most people don't want to be there. But I can put you there with a camera. So cameras are also a witness to the things that we're doing. So that's another motivation for me to get into photography, is to take the camera with me instead of another person. The camera is a witness and it's going to capture a moment that I see or an experience that I have. And then I can edit it or not edit it if it's journalistic. But if I edit the picture, I can turn it into a fine art piece. The other thing is cameras save these things for decades so that you can come back to them, pull those images out, and you have stock resources to make art pieces from. So what originally got me into photography is to show people the way I see them, or the way I see the world, or to bring a witness in the form of a camera so that I can share with others the nutty things maybe that I've done. Not admitting that I've done anything nutty, but cameras even go underwater with you. So think about that. It's a lot of fun. What's the craziest photo shoot? Okay. That's a big question for me, because the craziest photo shoot, I don't really know what that is. What's crazy? Crazy photos might be, I discovered a bald-faced hornet nest, and these hornets were coming out and attacking people and stinging things. Is it crazy if I get in there really close and bring the cameras with me so that I can put the viewer in close context with a hornet attack? That might be crazy to some people. If you are allergic to insect venom, that would definitely be crazy, because you're risking your life. Maybe another crazy photo session is going out in the rain. Is that crazy? Some people think so. I don't. I think that's art. If you go out in the rain or any weather dynamic, wind, stormy clouds, things like that, those are my favorite things to be in. Maybe another level of crazy would be to put people in the water. Taking a person's portrait in water with just their head above the surface of the water, that's always interesting to me. Some people think that's crazy. I think it's very interesting art. When you take people out of the normal stand in front of the camera, get your picture taken kind of mode, and if you realize that your cameras today can handle the different weather conditions, from snow through pouring rain, or even underwater, if you put your camera in a housing, you can do underwater portraits. I don't think it's crazy, I think it's unusual. So, oh wait, I do have a crazy story. I was hired by a horse breeder. He had a Grand National Champion Pasofino. It's a type of horse that has a special cadence when it trots. He has a ranch in Connecticut, and they hired me to come and take portraits of this stallion. And I don't think of it as being crazy. I've been around horses. I take lots of equestrian pictures. And we go to his ranch, and I'm the photographer, so I'm there. And everyone kept asking me if I was afraid of horses. Of course not. I'm here to take pictures of horses. Why would I be afraid of them? So this would be under the category of craziest photo shoot, because Mr. Diaz wanted me to get into the corral where they're going to release this stallion, and then I would get pictures the way I wanted. I wanted a late afternoon photo session. I wanted the sunlight to be raking across because I wanted to exploit the musculature of the horse. I wanted to show their dramatic long tails. They have a wild mane. If you look up the Pasofino, you're going to see these things are dramatic looking even when they're standing still. So I went out in the middle of the corral, and I stood there with my camera. All my settings were good to go. I had an auto rewinder. This was in the film days, so the auto rewinder, every time you take a shot, it went ka-ching, so it was advancing the film. So then they brought it out, and I noticed that the handle that had the horse's halter, because they were going to pull the halter off, they want to make sure that there was nothing but the horse for these pictures. So as he was taking the halter off, the horse reared up its head and pulled the guy right off the ground. I thought, oh wow, that thing's really powerful. And then people were lining the railings of the fence. The fence was 6 feet high around this corral. And so all the grooms and people that were working there were standing on the fence to watch. I thought, wow, they're really interested in photography. So they turned the horse loose, and he just runs as fast as he can across this corral, and then he turned sideways, and he ran sideways. That was cool. Lots of great pictures, kicking up the dirt, the wind was in his hair, and he was sniffing the air, so he curled up his lip, and the whites of his eyes showed. Cool stuff. Ka-ching, 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 taking pictures. Then the thing does a turn, and looks straight at the camera, looks at me, and charges me. Ground pounding, dirt kicking, hard on, nostril flaring charge. What am I going to do? Would you turn around and run away? Or would you stand there like an idiot and keep taking pictures? I stood there like an idiot and kept taking pictures, because if he hits me, I'm going to have the best pictures ever. If he cuts out, I'm going to have these dramatic pictures. If I cut and run, I'm not the photographer they thought they hired. This horse did that and did a cutout and kicked dirt on me and ran in the other direction. He did that 3 times. I get the most powerful collection of photos ever for Mr. Diaz. Then when it was all done, they got the horse out, and I went out of the fence, went out of the corral. The grooms came up to me, the people that handle that horse every day and know it very well, said, man, you're crazy. Nobody gets in a corral with that stallion. Nobody. So, okay. That's a crazy photo session. Don't do it. Mr. Diaz calls you, say no, so you're busy. So many years ago, I'm sure Bueno's gone. Okay, how do you get pretty natural smiles in your subjects? Pretty natural smiles. When I'm taking pictures of people, I don't tell them to smile ever. I have self-deprecating humor. I make fun of myself. I walk around, we talk, I find out who they are. And if they smile, maybe it's an embarrassed smile or something like that. It's not the fake lower face smile that you see so often, where you tell someone, smile, say cheese, and just their mouth goes. Notice the eyes didn't get involved. That's a creepy smile. If you have to tell people to smile for the picture, maybe you do that with a group because you kind of have to get everybody to smile, even if it's synthetic. But I say things like, smile for me even if it's a lie. Okay, well that's kind of funny because that weirdo says weird things. So if you can get people a little off balance and keep them in their comfort zone, but say things that are unexpected, you get a giggle, you get the shoulder laugh. So you get natural smiles. But if a person's normally a frowner, I don't ask them to smile. Why would I tell somebody who's intense and artistic and maybe some kind of dreary poet? If they're a poet and they're a rainy day person, a smile isn't going to look like that person. Most photo albums are lies. Birthdays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, everybody's got a forced smile on their face. Do you know who those people are? No, you don't. How come you don't know them? Well, because they're not normally like that. You and I know people that never smile. Now, they might get excited if you're the one and only person that person ever laughed at and you got a smile out of somebody who never smiles. But if that was spontaneous and it came from them, then you take it. That's a good smile shot. But natural smiles in your subjects come from catching the subject, the person, I'm guessing. We're not talking about smiling horses and smiling dogs, and spiders don't smile, although they look like they are sometimes. A natural smile comes spontaneously and isn't directed. So walk and talk, find out ask them, what do you think is funny? Nothing. So nothing's funny, you've never laughed at anything ever? So then, you say something that is awkward that they laugh at because it kind of isn't funny, but the way you delivered it to them was funny, so then they laugh and maybe that's an uncomfortable laugh, but you get a real laugh out of them, you just keep taking pictures. So find out where they live emotionally. Don't creep on people. And then you solicit a smile from them. The things that make them happy. When was the last time you smiled? Anyway, too much about that. But don't force a synthetic smile. Don't say cheese. Don't say smile for me. Hopefully you're entertaining enough or manipulative enough that you can get them to smile naturally. That's the goal. Okay, can you offer any tips on becoming a professional photographer? Well, tips on becoming a professional photographer. The first tip is to master the equipment, to master the medium, to communicate with images. Because if your goal right out of the bat, become a professional photographer, I'm just assuming that question means I want to earn money with photography. So you look at, if you tell your parents you go home and say I'm going to be a photographer, it's going to be my profession, they're probably going to take away your camera and shut down all your social media and take the phone in your hand and put tape over its camera. Nobody wants their child to go and pursue a career in professional photography. Unless they're also photographers. My dad wanted me to be a professional photographer. That's why I told him no, I would never do that because I'm going to be a painter because painters are sophisticated. But anyway, if you want to become one, you have to know your trade. If you don't like people, if you see people walking up the hall and you don't communicate, you don't connect, and you honestly don't care about people, don't you dare pick up a camera and become a portrait photographer. And then say, hey, I'll take your picture, you give me $10, I'm just starting out. But if you're not a people person, what are you doing? Now there are venues in photography that don't require you to have a personality that likes other people. You can be a food photographer. You can be a product photographer. You can be a landscape photographer. You can be a wildlife photographer. Those areas are highly competitive. So you're going to have to be very good at what you do. Whatever you select as far as your specialty in photography, you're going to have to be good at that, good enough that somebody's going to want to spend money on how you see that subject matter. So I'm kind of one of those photographers that's broad in scope. I'm a one-stop shop in photography because during the week I do product photography. The space I'm in right now is where I do my product photography. We do videos of how products work. I do portrait photography. I do high school seniors. I do celebrity photography, which is not what you're going to see in a magazine though. For example, if I go out to LA to take portraits of what I call fringe celebrities, not A-listers, but if I'm taking their portraits, these are the portraits that they want for their home. These are the portraits that I take because I'm not part of that commercial system. I take the intimate, personal portraits for people that they know are not going to hit social media. So that's another area. But how did I get there? How did I become a professional photographer that gets hired to take pictures of people that, how do they find me? Well, they find you by word of mouth. So it starts with the people around you right now. It could start on Facebook or whatever, Instagram, whatever you use. If you're taking pictures of people and they like the way you took their picture, and someone says, my friend is getting married, it's a really low budget wedding, they're going to be on a beach and they're all going to dress like hippies and it's going to last 2 hours. We can't afford an expensive wedding photographer, but we like the way you take pictures. Would you mind taking my friend's wedding pictures? Sure. As long as they understand that you're just starting out, maybe you've got a great eye. Okay? So if you see composition well and you communicate, again, this falls back to, do you communicate with people? Are you a people person? Are your pictures going to be natural? Or are you just going to run around and set up every pose that you've ever seen and try to boss people around? Working with people in photography, specifically portraits, and bossing them around so that you get what you need are two very different approaches to photography. If people like you, and they like your personality, and they like the way you communicated, and they like the pictures that you took, you're going to be working. You're going to be getting paid for your photography. So you definitely need to know how the equipment works. That's, you know, there's no shortcuts. A lot of people get a camera. The cameras are smart. Cameras are nothing but computers with lenses on them. So they're smarter than ever. You can turn your camera on, you can put it on automatic, and you can start taking pictures, and the camera does a great job. But you need to understand all the different functions of a camera, and you need to be able to work with it in manual mode so that you can present it in the way that the end product needs to be presented. Because the way you photograph food is not the way you photograph a person. There's natural light, there's available light, and then there's off-camera lighting that you control. Studio lighting like this right here. I control everything about the lighting in here. I don't have to adjust anything. I can set up a camera just for this room, for this lighting. It stays set like that forever. It's a no-brainer. But you need to understand so that you can be creative in what you do. So, back to it. Can you offer any tips on becoming a professional photographer? Work on photography first. Become good at it. Distinguish yourself. Don't believe the lies of your friends. You know, every picture you post, oh my gosh, it's awesome. That's just the best picture I've ever seen. You should be a professional. It looks like it's in a magazine. Okay. If that person says that about every picture you've ever taken, start ignoring that person. You want the person who doesn't like and love every single picture you put up. You want to know when you've done something cool or something good or something that has an impact on your client or subject matter. If someone looks at a portrait of someone that they don't even know and they love that portrait and they stand over and like, oh man, that is a really outstanding portrait, you're really getting something. And if that comment comes from someone that doesn't normally comment on your work, that's the lead. That's where you're doing your best work. So you follow that. Friends that just love everything everybody does, if they like everything, they like nothing. So start there. I think that's good. Become a professional. It's a gradual process. People start to hire you for small things. You work up your portfolio. If you're putting up a portfolio, by the way, and you want to be a professional, don't you dare go out with your friend and take a picture of them in some, you know, woodland area on the beach or whatever, and then put up 32 pictures of that friend on the beach and have a color picture, a sepia tone picture, a black and white picture of the same shot, and then fill a whole album with that. Don't do that. Pick one picture that's outstanding. Pick two from that photo session that are outstanding. If none of them are outstanding, don't you dare post it. So you pick one that is good, that represents you, and that you're proud of personally. And you put that up there and leave it there. And then the next time you have a photo session with somebody's puppy or their pet monkey or whatever they have, don't put up spiders. People will delete you as a friend if you put up spider pictures. Not that I would know, but they'll delete you. Anyway, so you take the few really good shots out of that photo session and you put that up. And don't put up a bunch of versions of the same image. That's a huge mistake. Primacy is a person's first exposure to your work. Let's say I'm looking for a second shooter. Second shooter is somebody to bring along with me that will take secondary background shots or do photography in an area while I'm going and doing something else. And we generally pay them $20 an hour. So a second shooter is someone that I've seen their work, and they're usually a startup photographer. And I see that they have a good eye. And I like that what they're doing is communicating to me the subject matter clearly, and I like it. So I'll contact that person. But if I look at it and it's just a shotgun of 25 pictures of their kitten or their best friend from high school, and they say they take senior pictures and they have 2 people but 50 pictures, I just keep going. So, I mean, other people might like that and they might ultimately hire you, but I'm thinking, put forward your very best work. Would you hire you? Look at the stuff. Would you hire you? Did you get stopped in your scrolling tracks when you looked at that picture? Did you go, whoa, who took that? That's how you're going to get attention. That's how you're going to get started. So find people that are not brutally critical of you, but people that will honestly tell you the truth about the work that you're posting, and post only your best work. If that's 5 pictures, then it's 5 great pictures, and that's primacy. And if I looked at that, wow, this person's on their way. That's where you want to be. More is not better. Okay. Can you suggest any tips on proper settings? No. Okay, wait, let me think about it. Proper settings for your camera. So if you're talking about manual settings in the camera, sometimes manual settings are your best venue. But I shoot most often in aperture priority. So the cameras I use don't have the usual wheels on top that have the running person and the, you know, the flower and then the landscape mountains and things like that. All the cameras I use have little 3-dot controls on top. There are no automatic settings, there's no program mode, there's no full auto mode, so everything I do is manual. But if I'm in an environment where I have to shoot people in motion, and over here it's really shady, over here it's really bright sunlight, I can't set a manual setting and then track around and shoot these people. So I set the ISO for the area to make sure my ISO is high enough that I can get detail in the darks, but not so high that the highlight areas are going to be completely blown out. So I would meter it. Sometimes people wonder what you're doing when I stand here and I pull out a camera and I'm like pointing at the sky or I'm pointing out a shaded area when your subject is sitting right there. I know where they are. I'm just balancing the camera light because I want some detail in the shadows, and I don't want the sky to be completely blown because I want a cerulean blue sky. Hopefully it's a cloudy day because that's the best day. But so I might shoot in aperture priority. So what happens is I set the aperture. So if it's a wide open fast lens and I want to shoot it at 2.8, let's say, 2.8 wide open aperture, that means that my subject matter, let's say we're shooting in a crowd and I want to isolate one person specifically. I do that through selective focus. So if I set it at 2.8, the people in front of that person are going to be soft and out of focus. The people immediately behind them are soft and out of focus, but their face is crystal clear. I just drew attention to them. So then, and I set the ISO, let's say at ISO 1000, the camera will automatically change the shutter speed as I pan around and as I shoot that person. So when they're really bright light, it might be shooting them at a 400th of a second, but then when I come over here to the shadows, it might drop to 250 or 100. And if I have a wide angle lens, 100 is fast enough for me. That's why you do that early checking and metering of the light around you. So I would say it depends on the environment you're going to shoot in, what your settings are going to be. Be careful about your camera's capability. I personally shoot with cameras that can manage ISOs way up into the 100,000 area. That's ridiculous. Nobody shoots in that unless it's moonlight, and then the moonlight sometimes is too bright. So learn the limits of the camera, because if you shoot in a really dark space and you try to shoot that really fast, and you want to shoot that at an f8 because you want everything in focus, then you're going to find out later when you put that on your computer it's super noisy and an unusable image. Of course you could fall back on, hey, that's fine art. All that noise is intended, that's what I wanted. Oh, that picture's out of focus? It's because it's artistic and you can't appreciate my art. No, it was out of focus. You didn't know what you were doing. Just be honest, okay? But the settings are relevant to the subject matter. If it's in motion, if it's moving around, you're going to have to move fast. You can't shoot all manual. Football game, you're not going to shoot all manual. You're going to set up your ISO, and then you're going to set up your f-stops because you want to isolate that football player that's handling the ball or throwing the ball or whatever, and you want to cut away the other players around him. So you shoot that at an f6 with a 200mm lens. So then you want your ISO high enough that as you move around the field, because sometimes the spotlights hit them better and sometimes they're shaded by another player, so you need to preset your camera to handle the dynamic range of whatever your subject matter is. It's a pretty broad scope question. What add-ons or accessories do I recommend? You know, you can be as basic as just having a camera and using available or natural light. The difference between available and natural light comes from the sun. Even if you're shooting the moon, that light came from the sun because, you know, light's reflecting off of the moon and onto your subject. But available light is you walk into a space and there's already, you know, lights on. Heaven forbid, there's incandescent lights over here, fluorescent lights over there. What are you going to do? Those lights have different color associated with them. It's going to wreak havoc on your camera. You can have really warm lights on one side of your subject, and if there's fluorescence over here, you can have that weird blue tint. So what are you going to do? You can override it with a flash. None of my cameras have a pop-up flash on them. None of them do. So I would say the first piece of equipment, if you want to add and have some control over the light and the, you know, the temperature of the light, like daylight 5100, whatever, you're going to want to get a flash. So look, I just happen to have a flash here because I thought that question might be asked. Could be because I read the questions in advance. But this is a speed light. These go on top of your camera. Now, the other thing is most prosumer or beginning level cameras are going to have a pop-up flash on it. You can use that, but make sure you're really close to your subject matter with the pop-up flash. If you go into a room and the person you're trying to shoot with your pop-up flash on the camera is 20 feet away, but there's another person standing right next to you, you're going to notice that the things right next to you get blown out because this little flash is trying to send enough power to light your subject. So it's spot metering on the subject that you're trying to photograph. So off-camera lighting, I would say, get a speed light. Most cameras will control these wirelessly. If you don't have a wireless control system built into the camera, the other thing is, I know they're expensive, but like I shoot Nikon. If you do, then you're going to want to get the Nikon speed lights because they're compatible with the cameras. But if we want to take it off camera, there's something called Pocket Wizards. This right here is a little thing that controls the Pocket Wizards, and it has what's called a cold shoe, and it sits right on your camera. And this thing obviously is not the flash itself. Let me grab another camera. But look, I just happen to have a Nikon D4S here with a 70 to 200mm lens. So my subject's really far away. So I put this AC3 controller on top of my camera and I turn it on, and then it's on what's called a TTL mode, which stands for through the lens. Then I take a friend or a lighting assistant or a second shooter and I say, look, take this Pocket Wizard and run off with this SB5000 speed light, which is really impressive speed light, lots of power. Notice it has this little diffuser on it. If they stand near the subject that I'm shooting, it's going to throw a softer light. I can pull it off and throw a hard light. But the person holding this rig can be 200 feet away from me, 300 feet away from me. And then when they're down there and now I shoot my subject, it's going to trigger. So Pocket Wizards, I realize this stuff's expensive. Get on eBay, go to a store like Autorama online, and buy used and refurbished equipment. Let me tell you something, if the gear is refurbished, it's as good as new. It might not be cosmetically as good as new, but when you're just starting out with photography, you're going to want to have off-camera lighting capabilities. It's better than ever. Now this SB5000 is ridiculously expensive. Don't start with it. But it's got a built-in radio receiver, so it communicates with cameras like, this is the D4S. But if you use, like this one is the Nikon D5, it has built-in radio controls for this speed light. So this camera can control the speed light without the Pocket Wizard edition. So, simple. If you get the equipment that comes with the manufactured camera, Nikon camera, Nikon lenses, Nikon speed lights, you don't have compatibility issues, and you have the ability to bring light where you didn't have it before and control that light temperature. That's very important. As I mentioned before, the nightmare scenario, multiple light sources, different color temperatures. You can override all of that and control it with your flash. The other thing is light modifiers, things I recommend. Get yourself a 4-in-1 reflector. That lets you take away light, like it has a black side, or gold and silver and white in general. Also get the one that has a diffuser in it, so that's a 5-in-1. When you pull all the covers off, you have a sheer material, so you can take someone out in direct sunlight, put that over their head and diffuse the light and have a nice soft light on their face for a portrait. So 5-in-1 or 4-in-1 reflector, diffuser, can shadow an area or it can bring reflective light, and that will change your portraiture a lot. Right there in Mr. Salarino's classroom, you can take a piece of poster board, have somebody go over and stand by the windows there, and then on the shadow side of their face, hold the poster board up and you'll have a fill light just from a white piece of paper or a white piece of poster board, and it brings amazing light into their eyes as well, while you have natural light coming through that window. I recommend you turn off the classroom lights because they're fluorescent and they're terrible. And then just the light from the window, otherwise you have a person falling into darkness on the shadow side, chiaroscuro, nothing wrong with that. But then you bring in that white reflector next to their face, out of frame, and you get a nice fill and you'll get an amazing portrait. And get close to them and shoot it at an f4 or something so that it's wide open and the things beyond them are soft and out, and you get a nice sharp portrait out of that. So light modifiers that don't require power, so you don't have to have a Pocket Wizard, but you get the reflector sets. They're dirt cheap. Get a small one, they don't have to be huge, and get the 4-in-1, which is reflectors and shadow capable, or get the 5-in-1, which will have that diffuser when you pull everything off, and you can soften the light and work in harsh daylight, which sometimes is all you have. So that's what I recommend. Oh, tripod. Get a small tripod, get an inexpensive tripod. Sometimes you want to take a longer exposure, so you want to be able to sit your camera still. Maybe you want to take a selfie, an advanced, really good selfie, not just with your phone. Although there are tripods that hold your phones for you, get away from phones. So get a tripod, that's going to be handy, and it'll allow you to shoot things in very low light and you get some really cool stuff. So those are the things I suggest. Do you edit every photo you sell or publish? Okay, here's the thing. It depends on what the job is. If it is documentary style, if I'm shooting something because I do documentary cinematography, for example, if I'm doing documentary photography and portraits of things as they happened, a real event that's being documented, I don't edit that because it has to be absolutely the truth and what was going on there. So you don't get to adjust anything. I've been on photo sessions before where people hired me and they wanted so much control over what was covered and how it was presented, they took the memory cards from the camera. Some of those memory cards are $500 each. They added that to the cost of the photo session so they would have complete control. That's fine with me. Take the card. I don't even want to touch it. Because the way those photos are going to be used anyway, I'm not going to see them. I don't need credit for it. Now, if I'm going to put a picture on Facebook or on my primary website, or it's going to go to a client that expects edited photos, don't release a photo to a client that you're not comfortable with having that photo represent you. Every photo session that you have, every photo that you take, every image that you deliver is an audition for future work. So if you think, oh, I just don't have any time, I'm just going to take all these pictures, I'm going to give them 1,000 photos, they can tell me which ones they like and then I'll edit them later. No. Because what's going to happen is that person's going to put up your worst picture I go, oh my gosh, look at this, is amazing. And then people that know photography, you know, look at that and go, that's crap. I wouldn't hire that guy. They have obviously no clue what they're doing when it comes to photography. You did that to yourself. Do not let a photo go that you are not comfortable having your name assigned to. Don't ever do that thing where take all the pictures, just have them, and then you just let me know what you want edited, then I'll edit it later. Your editing process is part of your branding. The look of your images should kind of tell people, especially as you get further on in your career as a professional, if that's what you do, people should almost look at that image immediately and see that's a photo taken by you. You look, wow, that looks like something you know, Mr. Dunn would have taken. And well, look out, it is. Now that might be because they're doing something unusual in the water, underwater, in the rain, in the snow, whatever. But it also should be the way that you've post-processed the image. That kind of becomes your brand and becomes consistent. So yes, I edit everything that goes to a client where I think the image might be seen by future clients. Nothing goes out raw. Oh, by the way, never give away your raw files. You control that. Those are your negatives. Don't give somebody, you know, the whole thing. It tells the world how you took the picture, what your settings were, everything. And those are your negatives. Photographers never sold their negatives. Keep it for yourself. Unless it's one of those super private clients that buys your card, they're not going to name you anyway. So don't give away your raw files. How do you make a portrait photo look unique? Well, I kind of covered that already. You're going to have your own style, and I understand that copying other people's portraits is a good beginning. If you're a painter, you're going to look at what other painters have done. In fact, when you go to art school, they're going to have classic traditional painters, and you're going to be expected to copy those paintings. And you'll go to an art gallery sometimes, you'll see an art student set up right there in an art gallery copying a masterpiece. So, you know, copying and finding a photographer, finding images that speak to you the way you plan in the future to speak to others with your images. Nothing wrong with, you know, unpacking that photo and looking at how they lit it. You know, that's really powerful. I want to know, wow, how did they get the light to be just like that? How did they get that skin tone? How did they get the landscape to be toned like that? You're going to decide who you're going to learn from. And today, because we have the internet and because we have access to images by every prominent photographer all over the world, you can really select and follow a photographer that shoots portraits in the way you hope to. And then you will start to copy, you know, the way they've done their portraiture. And that eventually gets modified bit by bit until it becomes your visual brand. So ultimately, you're going to just have your own style. Because I went through a whole period where I was shooting pre-Raphaelite style portraits, which are after the pre-Raphaelite painters, which are all sad people. And, you know, even Ophelia was a series in there where it's you know, Ophelia, if you know the story, you know, she descends into muddy death. So I was taking portraits of people sinking away from the surface of water into ultimate darkness. To me, that was high art, and that was really cool. Some people were really depressed by it and thought those were terrible pictures. So your own style may not even be marketable, but I highly suggest still that you have your own style. So that's how your portraits look unique. By unique, I mean a portrait that shares the way you see something. It doesn't have to follow any rules. People will talk about the rule of thirds and lighting things just right and everything else. There are technicians out there that take great pictures, great technical pictures. They're not artists. If you're already an artist when you begin, I can teach you the technical end. I can't find someone who's a technical photographer who has absolutely no feel for the world. I can't make them see the world as an artist. Artists are almost born that way. I can teach you to see better, you know, maybe consider things that are in the shot better, but I can't make you see the world as an artist. That's kind of something you're born with. Technical photographers, art photographers are kind of two different schools. So, how long was your longest photo shoot and what was it? I'm going to say that my longest photo shoots, first of all, weddings are super long. You're going to start at maybe noon and be done by 10. That's if you're one of those photographers that markets yourself to provide coverage all day long. My longest photo session ever was when I was hired to cover a couple down in Cancun. And I realized that we were going to go to Chichen Itza, we were going to go to the Aztec ruins and all of that. They basically had me from 7:30 in the morning until 11 at night. That is my longest continuous photo shoot ever. And that's because they're super affluent people from Colorado, and they hired me here and they flew me down there, and I had my own driver and they set me up in my own motel room, and all I had to do was follow them around and photograph their entire day, whatever they did. I even had to take pictures of them while they were eating. I had to take pictures of them walking down the beach. I did talk them into getting bashed by waves, which is pretty funny because their swimsuits filled up with sand. I got them back, you know, kind of that way, but that's the longest shoot ever. You're going to want to have physical stamina. If you're going to be a photographer and you're going to be a portrait photographer and you're going to market yourself, some of the camera equipment is pretty heavy. You may have to hike a long distance with some people. The more fit and capable you are, the more jobs you can bid. So if you don't like hiking, or if you're not very versatile, or if you're afraid of boats and you don't want to get on a sailboat with people, or you're not a swimmer and you can't put yourself in an environment where there's rushing water and things like that, don't put yourself in jeopardy. But the higher your fitness level, partnered with the more competent you are as a photographer, the more jobs open up to you. If they hire a photographer and that photographer walks up a flight of stairs and they're out of breath, guess what? People remember that, and it erodes away the confidence they have in that photographer's ability to do other jobs. You are always auditioning for your next job. Okay. What is the time frame between shoot and delivery to the customer? Depends on the customer and if there are deadlines. I try to get weddings done within a week, 2 weeks at the most. Why? Because I do over 30 weddings a year. And if I don't wrap up that wedding, which is one of the reasons why I can't come to your classroom and talk to you today, if I don't wrap up that wedding and get it delivered, at least in the mail to my client, there's another wedding the next weekend. It starts to pile up on you and you need to deliver your work fast. Some commercial work, as soon as you walk off the job, can we get this by 10? You know, they want that overnight. They want that the very next day. So some commercial work, the clock is ticking immediately the minute you take the picture. So, and thanks to Dropbox, you know, you have this interchange all over the world. A company hired me from Canada that needed pictures of all the weird things, you know, vaults in a mausoleum. And they gave me the address and all this. I almost thought it was a prank because they were contacting us from Canada. They named a cemetery here in Erie County, and they had bronze vaults that I was supposed to go and photograph, and they needed them the next day. So, man, it was a real deal. You know, I went in there, I was the only one there, it was borderline creepy. I set up tripods because I knew it was going to be interior space with limited lighting, and I also knew that it needed to be very detailed and very accurate, no artistic angles there. But they needed it right away. So you need a Dropbox account or something like that, so the quick turnaround. So at the long end of things, 2 weeks for a wedding, for me. I mean, some people take months to do that, but I just can't do it that way. If it's a movie, it's a music video, something like that, I'm going to ask for a month because I want to do post-production, I want to match it up, and I want it to look great. So anyway, high school senior, I ship them out within 2 days, let's say. Okay, generally, what is the cost of a photo shoot? Photo sessions with me, unless it's a wedding, we have packages for weddings, but we bid them individually, but I have a flat rate of $150 an hour. So, high school senior photo session, $150 an hour once I get there. Now, at the 60-minute mark, do I go, oh, hour's up? No, because if that person, if you're on a roll, and this person is really working well in front of your camera, and they're getting great pictures and they're having a good time, don't you dare chop them off at the 60-minute mark and say, oh, that's it. Sorry, you didn't get that. We're not going to be able to put your pet monkey in because the time's out. So, no, your chicken stays in its cage. Time's up unless you want to pay me more. You do that to people, you're done working. So, the cost is $150 an hour, and I don't nitpick it. So maybe it goes to the next half hour. So that goes to, and we can charge them $75 for an extra half hour if it goes to that full extra half hour. But you shoot yourself in the foot professionally if you become very rigid about your pricing, and if you lock people in and nickel and dime them. Let's say you only did it for 45 minutes. Well, my minimum's $150. So, hopefully you can find a way to fill the time and to continue to get them good pictures, but be honest about it. If you got what you're going to get, if this person, guys in particular, generally don't want to have a high school senior photo session. So usually it's the mom, the aunt, somebody else who's making them have their photo session. If you can wrap up that individual in 30 minutes, charge them $75, even though they knew coming into it they were going to pay $150. Okay, that was annoying. I have to stop. Okay, so if you're going to be making a YouTube, unplug your phone. I don't even own a cell phone because I know that I would never get anything done. My wife does all my scheduling, all my bookings, and she takes all of my scheduling calls. So there's that. So what does it cost for a photo session? $150. Commercial work, if it's product photography, sometimes they pay me for product photography with the products. I mean, be careful about that. You end up with a studio full of stuff you don't need. So you can, the barter system is good, especially when you're starting out. A lot of people trade portraits for modeling. So if you see someone that you like and you think you're going to work well with them and they're going to help develop your portfolio, then talk to that person and say, you know, if you'll model for me and take the pictures I want, then I'll give you the pictures and you can keep them for yourself or whatever. So that's how you begin to grow. But when you're charging money for it later, it's going to be based on how complicated it is. If I'm shooting products right here and they're going to ship me a whole box of stuff and I have 52 items, I just give them a blank charge for that. Like, in other words, I'll say, you know, I'll do all of your cooking utensils for $400, and then it's all going to be delivered through Dropbox. So guess what your overhead costs are? None. Once you have your photographic equipment, once you have your lighting, once you have your space where you're going to work, the overhead's gone. It used to be that we processed film and there was all that expense involved. Sometimes you had to send the film off for processing when it was a certain color. Those days are gone. Now it's all digital. So once you have your equipment, your editing station is set up, then your expenses are paid. So everything after that is income. But don't forget that the equipment that you're using, the camera equipment, the lenses, everything else, eventually are going to be upgraded and replaced. So you're also planning for that future. Plus, you have your current living costs. So, and for weddings, I think we start at $1,600 or something, and then there's the top package is a little over $2,000. So because you're turning that around in a week, you're making, you know, a little over $2,000 a week. Plus, you're going to have the intermediate work that comes. Maybe there'll be a couple of high school seniors that week. Maybe somebody has a birthday party they want you to come and cover. So those are all added up. And then you have print sales. So your print sales are part of the income you're going to get. Commercial people are not going to buy prints from you, but individuals and families will. So what you're charging for the photo session itself gets, you know, that's income, but in addition you're going to get income from prints if they order. I do give people the option to have their prints made anywhere they want. So they get a print release with the things that I do, and that includes weddings. I honestly can't keep up with the demand if I mandate that they have to get their prints from me. I figure I took them all, I edited them all, I provided for the client. I made enough money off the shoot itself that I don't need the added income from selling them gallery wrapped canvases, custom framed and matted prints, or silver halide prints. Those prints are a better quality, so when they do order from me, they get a better quality print. But today, a lot of people aren't even printing their stuff. So if I mandate a minimum print package with something, like you come to me for a high school senior photo session and you think it's $150 an hour, and then I turn around and say, oh yeah, but you have to order $400 worth of prints from me too, I just lost a customer. You know, I want to give you your pictures after your 1 hour photo session or 2 hours, and I want you to have them and then have the liberty to go and do what you want with them, because frankly, scheduling a session where we order your prints is too much work for me. So there's that. What's it cost for a photo shoot? Some people try to overpay me too. When I went out to LA and I did high school seniors out there, even in San Francisco, the mother tried to pay me triple what I was charging. I said, no, this is my fee. Apparently photographers out there charge a huge amount of money, which I don't agree with. But then I'm not living out there, I'm not paying those prices. So, how many photos do you capture for each shoot? I don't count. I absolutely don't count the pictures I'm taking because we're digital. So when I'm taking, well, it depends too on what I have to edit. If it's a studio photo session, if it's a product photo session, then you know, I do 2 or 3 shots per product, different angles. The lighting is pretty constant, the setups are pretty constant, and the client already knows and that's what they want. So those are really fast moving. I'm not even spending 3 minutes on a product. So when it comes to a high school senior, I get carried away. You know, I just walk around and talk and take pictures, and you know, you look at the light and it's coming across somewhere and there's a tree that looks cool, or there's a piece of driftwood right there, huge wave coming in, go get bashed by that wave. Did we walk along, you know, you take more pictures. There could be 300 or 400 pictures. Another one might be 100 pictures. I don't have a set number. Some people say 10 poses, you know, 12 pictures, whatever. I don't want to count your pictures. We're digital. There's a reason why I enjoy digital photography, and that's because I have a 128 gig card in the camera, and those are double loaded cameras, so I'm unlimited. If I'm in a wedding, I might shoot 1,400, 1,500 pictures at a wedding. What does the client get at the end? About 1,200. Because I'm going to go through and delete anything that makes my client look awkward or makes me look bad as a photographer. Get rid of all that stuff. Don't you dare just hand people a card with all the pictures again. If it's a birthday, you know, if it's a 3-year-old running around collecting wildflowers or whatever, you know, give your clients the best of that collection and call out anything, again, that makes you look bad as a photographer. So, I have no set number. I don't think anyone gets photographed by me that gets away with less than 250, 300 pictures. So, and they're all edited when you get them. Okay, and then it says, thank you very much. We're looking forward to your video. Students are excited already. Well, thanks for watching. I don't know if this went too long. It didn't have a time frame on here, so I basically was at liberty to just talk and talk. Thank you for the questions. Sorry I couldn't come and meet you. Please feel free to tell Mr. Salarino if you have further questions. I'd be glad to answer, or if I started on something that you needed more information on. More than happy to do this again, because it's very convenient for me to just walk into the studio and make an unlisted YouTube like this one. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy learning about photography in that great classroom with the best teacher at that end of the hall, Mr. Salarino. Oh, if you need models, Cosmo's right across the hall. You know, they're into their looks. That's a great place to start to build your portfolio. Thanks for watching.